Hello everybody, it is Ebontis, and it's a big day. This is one of the bigger reviews that I've had a chance to do in quite a long time, and it is a very big game. We'll get to all the details, but before we go any farther, outside of my voice cracking, joys, this is going to be a spoiler-free review. I am going to have a lot of the screen look like this, because I do not want to ruin anything for basically anybody. I don't know what pieces of this experience you are going to want to see. The things I'm going to touch on, I do want to show you a little bit of the main city, because that was shown in the Starfield Direct. You know, a little bit of a clip here of shipbuilding here, or the skill tree there, or of what combat looks like here. But a lot of this is going to be me talking to you guys about my thoughts on it without showing that much, mostly because I don't want to spoil anything. I'll show you where I can, and I'll let you see what I can, but a lot of things I'm going to keep to your imagination because I want you guys to have fresh eyes when you get there. The other thing I want to do is make sure I thank Bethesda for the code. I have had about 2 weeks to play this thing, and I have put a lot of hours into this. I'm somewhere in the realm of mid-80s at this point, and I'm easily going to go over 100 as I continue to play this. Without that early access, 2 weeks, I would not be able to do this review, and I would not feel comfortable doing this review. And that's why I squeezed as much time into this game as I have, because I wanted to give this thing a fair critique. And with as much time as I put into it, I do think I can give it a pretty fair review, and I hope you enjoy this one. So without much further ado, this is my review for Starfield. So where to begin? When you think about this game, you're talking about RPG, very open experience, a lot of different ways to tackle a lot of the things you're presented with. Space, literally space, actually for a change. Literally, I should say video game space, but you are very much in space. And then just the immersive nature of the game. So much is tied to how you play and how you choose to interact and all the different things that you do. It is quite an experience. Now, what I will say is you've got a lot of things presented to you, but there's not a lot of hand-holding. There's not a lot of tutorial. There are some systems that are very obtuse and complicated. Certain things are kind of opaque until you really dive into them and spend some time with them. And the early goings in this game, I mean, this could be anywhere from like hour 5 to 8 to 20, depending on when you start wrapping your hand around certain things. But it did take me somewhere in probably the teens of hours, somewhere in that mid, 15 to 20 range. I was not sure what my feelings on this game were going to be, because my initial experiences on different pieces of this game were like, is this really doing a lot to set it apart? Is this something that I'm really looking forward to spend this many hours in? I really wasn't sure. And I honestly wonder if a lot of people's experiences early on are going to be that way, and then they don't follow it through to the finish line. Now, I can't tell you if you're not having fun with the game that you need to go spend 90 hours to go experience all the cool stuff that's in it. Some games are just not going to be for some people. I totally get that. Not everybody's going to like a Bethesda RPG. Some people are going to fanboy because it says Bethesda on the box. There's a big spectrum of people that are going to think about trying this game. My goal in this review is to hopefully let you know what the experience is like, so when you sit down to decide if you want to play, hopefully you have a decent idea of what that is. But I will say the initial goings are a bit bumpy. So if you do start, now whether you buy it or play it on Game Pass or wherever it comes across to you, the initial part was bumpy for me too. And I want you to know that my early impressions were a lower score in my head than where I ended up. Where I ended up is a recommendation of this game to a lot of people. Not everyone, because I know some people it's just not for you, but there's a lot here on offer, and I know there's enough unique ways to play this game, different systems that you could get lost in. A lot of people are going to find different things to experience here that they enjoy. There's going to be a few that just is not for them. But I can tell you one person's going to spend 50 hours in doing one thing, of which another person's going to spend 50 hours and not have touched what the other person did. And that's how crazy it can be. But I will tell you, trying to figure out those systems that they spend 50 hours in, those first 5 to 10 hours, a lot of tinkering, trial and error, experimentation, and probably got some things wrong. Some people are going to be okay with the experience of going through those bumps and hiccups and tests and trials to get to the point where you actually feel comfortable getting into these systems and really getting into the meat of the game, and some people won't. Now, when it comes to the actual meat of the game, that's going to be the quest, and we'll talk about those in a second. But the things surrounding the story that you're going to go on and the experiences that you're going to have, the characters you're going to meet, and all of those things, there's some stuff around it that I feel may rub people the wrong way, especially early on, until they really can, like, wrap their head around it. Just going to take a long time to really get comfortable, and some things are meant for endgame, and you kind of wish you could tinker with them earlier, and you just can't until you get to spend some time and level things up and get just deeper into the game. Now, when it comes to the actual quests themselves, that is the good stuff. That is the main course, and they delivered. This is your, you waited for it. A lot of people have been anticipating this game for a long time, and if you're looking forward to going on these cool faction quest journeys, decisions, choices, characters, interactions, consequences of decisions, and the ramifications of finishing up a quest line, on top of everything else that it's going to have between side quest and squirrel, everything else that you're going to be doing in between, that stuff's the good stuff. The main cities are very cool. The big story quests that you're going to interact with have some interesting thought about them. Side quests have some interesting choices. I had one where you could tackle the problem. The two ways that you tackle the problem could not be farther apart. Both of them work. I tried them. There's also a quest when I was trying to decide if I wanted to help out the corporate turd or the entitled traveler, and I really wasn't sure if I wanted to help either one. I ended up kind of picking the least of the evils, but you can make some choices that are definitely going down the dark side if you want to. And that's the kind of the thing about this game. The main quests, you've got a lot of ways to choose to handle them. And you can go good and evil. You can just have a different perspective. You can be the crazy space pirate, or you can be the upstanding citizen, and you can be all sorts of gray in the middle. And I think when it comes to these quests, there's a little bit in here for everybody. There's probably at least one faction that everybody's going to be like, that was an awesome quest. And there's probably another one that somebody's going to be like, that really wasn't my thing. I mean, you've got like politics and space war and like Western bounty hunter. You've got corporate espionage, and you've got space, wonder, and astronomy exploration. When you're talking about space, you got a lot of things covered there. So whether it's the side quests that are more related to the main cities and the planets that you're on that may take you to other places, whether it's the big stories that have big moments to them, the delivery of the voice acting is legit. There are so many voiced lines in this game all over the place. It is actually pretty impressive that it even fits anywhere. So the acting is very well done for the voices. These are not going to be like mocapped faces. This is not going to be your Red Dead or your Last of Us or anything like that where they got the mocap rig. These are going to be your animated and probably systemically animated faces. And generally they do a pretty good job. I had to get kind of over myself because after playing, your God of War and these deep poses and these cinematic moments, a lot of the game stories are going to be that one-on-one dialogue, or me, one other person, and then they turn to talk to another character in the conversation, and then they turn back, and then I talk to this person, and I turn, and you may see the side of somebody's head, but that's generally how it goes. It is you having that conversation with whoever is involved in that part of the quest. You've got your dialogue choices. You can get persuasion in there if you go down the skill tree, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But overall, that is how these stories are going to go. You're not going to have these cinematic acted moments of mocap and things. It is a different experience. Because the game is so wide, mocapping would be impossible, and that is just something I kind of had to accept. But I will tell you, by the time I got done with a lot of these things, and I haven't experienced them all yet, the journey is still a very enjoyable one, I think. Personally, for me, I enjoyed it, and I'm not even done yet. And I told you, I got many hours to go. Now, as for the main cities, these are on the big planets. You've got New Atlantis is the big one. This is your future city. This is where picture money and innovation and science have all kind of collected together, and this is like the main hub. That's New Atlantis. Now, you've also got your cities that are going to be deep industrial. You've got your cities that are going literally covered in dust. You've got your kind of open air, Western, kind of more lighter architecture, less futuristic. You've got your corporate espionage, Vegas-y kind of flashy lights and things. And then you got a couple other things I'm not even going to talk about because you guys will experience those on your own. Those main cities are legit. If you take the one that is industrial gritty thing, it fits it to the T. The way the walls are set up, the feel of just walking in there because it's this underground mining colony thing. The amount of effort into each one of these major cities is no joke at all. And I think for me, that's one of the things is there are a lot of the places where you're going to spend a lot of your time. They feel lived in, and it does a lot for building out how this game feels. Now, whether you enjoy running around the cities or not is one thing, because some of these cities, you can kind of get a little lost. Now, if you pull out your scanner and you've got a quest that you're trying to run to, there's going to be an arrow on the ground, and that is a godsend and a lifesaver. So use that thing a lot. But it's easy to get lost in these places too. So there are a couple things that help with that. As I said, the quest guidance and the arrows are big. Fast travel is another one. A lot of the places you go are going to be on foot. If it's not by spaceship, it is on foot. In some of these cities, you're doing some huffing it around everywhere. Once you've been somewhere, you can fast travel back to there. So typically you've only got to go out to the new place, but you can always fast travel back. Unless you're just like inside a cave or inside a nightclub. If you're in anything that's outside of that kind of area, you can fast travel in just about everywhere, which really, really helps because that's probably one of those like testing quality of life things. Well, where should we let him fast travel? Just about everywhere, and you can. I could be halfway across the galaxy and fast travel back to the main city of New Atlantis because I've been there and I'm at a point where I'm like not in combat and jumping in the air. You can fast travel just about everywhere and it makes a massive difference. But I will also tell you, the non-main planets, anything related to quests and stories is generally going to be decent. They're going to be a little more built out, a little more bespoke structures. When you get to the other 1,000 planets that are not involved in all of those things, you have the procedural generation they spoke of with some tweaking. So you're going to have abandoned mines, old barracks, caves, geological structures on these planets, because it can be a planet with no story involved. You can land and you can have different like landmarks to go to that can be marked by different things. And when you go to these places, you're going to find resources, maybe some random space enemies that you can fight. Maybe they're going to be like 25 levels above you. And this one dude is really hard to kill, but if you kill him, you get a really cool weapon that you can use for a long time. That happened. And there are moments landing on those planets are kind of cool. But do you need to see all 1,000 planets? No. There is not going to be a benefit to going to see every planet. At some point, you're going to maybe be, if you're doing outposts, the resources are going to be coming from these kind of places. That's where I can see some people spending some time on these. If you're going for like mining and going for the deeper resource gathering and crafting and that type of stuff, I can see that's where those are going to come into play much more frequently. For my playthrough, I just randomly would stop at one, see what's there, run to a place just to see what would happen. Some were cool. Some were pretty only okay, if not much happening at all. You've got a procedurally generated sections of those other planets, but the main ones, they're well done. They're legit, and there was a lot of love put into those. Now, to get to all of those planets and all of those other planets and quests, you're going to be traveling in space. Now, space travel generally is kind of a point and click thing. You're going from here to here. And as I said, fast travel helps. If you're going to get in your ship, then go up to orbit, and then decide where you're going to fly to, grab jump to get there. Then when you get to that planet, then you're going to pick where your actual landing zone is. Then you're going to go through the landing animation. That can take a little while. And especially if you're going to a faraway star system, you have to make like jumps because you have to actually stop at each of the new locations you've been to. But if your gravity drive has enough fuel that you can cover a long distance, if you go out a long ways and you want to come all the way back to your main hub, if you've got the fuel to do it, you can do that in one quick fast travel. So the going to is going to always probably be much longer than the coming back from, which honestly I'm okay with, because usually if the coming back was long, that'd be kind of frustrating. But if that's quick, you can just hop on to the next step. So space travel and fast travel go together very well. Space combat is a thing that is going to take some getting used to. There's not a bunch of a tutorial to that. Sometimes you're a little thrown to the wolves. Sometimes you feel like you're outgunned. And then you want to upgrade your ship, but if you didn't specialize in ship parts and things like that, or you haven't built out your weapons or things like that, or you're just maybe not the best pilot in the world, ship combat's going to be a little weird. It takes some getting used to, It's kind of cool when you get the feel for it, and then finally I'm again 80 hours in and feeling kind of comfortable about it. But early on, I felt like I was getting my butt whooped and I was just getting outgunned, which may have been what it wanted me to do in the first place. Normal combat, I will tell you, feels better than I expected. Watching the showcase and the videos we had seen previously, when it comes to combat, I can tell you I was probably a little worried. Well, I played Fallout 4 as my other main Bethesda game that I've played. As I said, I hadn't really played Elder Scrolls. I know, big giant shocker. Fallout 4 didn't feel that great, and especially coming from a lot of Destiny that I've played and other shooters that have felt very good. Like even Remnant 2 did a pretty damn good job for a third-person shooter. You can play this first or third person. Combat is one of those things that's about feel. And I will tell you, I am pleasantly surprised that whether my frames are kind of up and down, I was playing at 4K, but even at medium settings, if DLSS or FSR, depending on which one you're using, DLSS is not there right now. It's only FSR, but somebody's probably going to put DLSS on it later. If that's not there, I'm on a 5950X and a 3090. It's not a slouch of a rig. It's not the top dog right now, but it is definitely above average. Now, I know 4K can be a stretch there. I was somewhere between probably 40 and 60 frames. Somewhere in there. Sometimes hanging around 60, sometimes a little lower. The drops were real. Like, my performance and drop in frame rate was real. But I will say, all of that experience aside, my enjoyment of combat, while it may not always be perfectly fluid, combat felt good. And you've got a lot of variety in how you can do it. The guns themselves feel good. They have weight. The enemies interact when they get shot by stuff, which I'm like, okay, here we go. You can get some stagger and stun. Long range, like, suppressed sniper shots can drop people from far away. You can kind of be a little sneaky about it. I can also walk up with an auto shotty and blow away a big mini mech robot.
Let us hope
The spectrum of combat is also going to be one of those things you're going to have to figure out how you want to play the game. But generally, the combat, I gotta be honest, feels better than I expected. And I don't think that's going to be a place where people have massive nitpicks. It's not going to be the best shooting game in the world, because the game is doing so much. But I will tell you, the amount of effort and development time put into combat seems to have paid off, and it's something that it was just part of the game. It's not something I was worried about or thinking about. It was just part of the game, which I think is a compliment, because I'm not trying to nitpick it. I'm just experiencing it as I go and knowing, like, whatever I've got to face next, just pull out my weapon, whatever my choices are, and go. So the fact that I was not ever, like, too worried about combat, and I knew whatever weapons I had, I could lean into the playstyle that I had, and I can typically get the job done, I enjoyed it. So for a game that does as much as it does, having the combat land as well as it did, I'm impressed. Now, all of these things that I have mentioned so far, space travel, shipbuilding, stories, quests, the main planets, all of these things tie into your skills. Now, the skills are how you're going to decide how you play the game. Now, I know that seems obvious, but the skills are almost how you're going to define your class in a game. Because if you picture a warrior in a fantasy game, they're not going to be doing the same things as a thief or a rogue. And they're definitely not going to be casting spells like a mage. This is space future. This is not fantasy. So you have to be a little grounded in reality, but you specialize in just different things. As I said, I specialized in shipbuilding. You've also got the option to specialize in outposts and resource farming and managing outposts with different companions and all of that stuff. Maybe you just want to go full melee combat and have as much oxygen supply as possible and be able to do all of the damage you can with your hands and disarm people and all these other things. Maybe you use a booster pack, maybe you don't, but like your experience of combat, your experience of game systems is going to be very closely tied to the skills. And you cannot reset your skills, so you're going to kind of have to decide early which direction you want to go. Now, some people are going to complain that you can't reset your skills, but I will tell you now, I actually understand why. Because shipbuilding is a very good example. If you get deep into shipbuilding, you can use better parts on your ships, and you can actually pilot higher class ships, which usually involve like better parts and stuff. If you made a crazy ship, and then you reset your points and went after something else, you're not going to be able to pilot that ship, and then it's just going to be parked there, and you spend all so it's like, I get why. The other thing is the way the skills work. There are 4 tiers to them. So if you're on the first tier, you put a skill point into that, and then you have a little mini objective to do. When that is done and you have another skill point, then you can unlock tier 2. That's going to give you a little beefier objective. Same thing, finish up that objective, get another skill point once you level up, then you can go to tier 3. Tier 3 of that objective is going to have a bigger objective. Same thing, when you finish that objective, it might have been 10, then 20, then 50, whatever it is, for example. Then when you finally get all that done, you get another skill point, then you can go into 4. Now, if there are like 80-something skills in this game, and you get 1 point per level, I'm about level 40 at 80 hours in. I'm probably not going to claim to be the most efficient, I'll be honest, because there's a lot of tinkering and experimentation as I went. But even if I was like level 50, and each skill has 4, you're talking about 12 and a half skills that I would be able to max out of 80. You really are going to have to specialize. Some people are going to enjoy that because it really leans into the role of I want to be this, this, and this. Some people are going to want to experience all that, and you're not going to be able to. So, 1, try and plan out what type of player you are going to be by staring at those skills, figuring out what you want to specialize in, because they all have functions, they're just different functions. Then when you figure out what you want to have strengths in, lean into those and really work on upgrading them and spend time working on them, but just know you're not going to be able to see everything. If you're going deep in shipbuilding, and then you're also going deep into like weapon combat, it's very unlikely you're going to be putting an outpost on an extreme weather planet, because the amount of skill points it takes to get down there is going to be many, many more hours of playing. Maybe eventually, but honestly, that's probably what alternate playthroughs are for. That's my guess what they would be for. New Game Plus is an option, but many people are probably going to do just different playthroughs to experience different decisions and stuff with the quest as well. So the skill trees are very important, but they will definitely define your character. Some people are going to be okay with really living that role, and some people may feel very limited by those. And I think that's going to be one of those, how do you kind of, are you on board with the type of game that you're jumping into? I think that's the biggest thing there. Things like crafting, outposts, shipbuilding are very intricate in what you need to know to work with all those systems. So it is just going to be a choice you make or don't make. Now, when it comes to like nitpicks in these systems, there are some that I feel are going to be a little more required. One of them is your boost pack. I recommend doing that because boosting around your jetpack with a lot of different gravity in different planets is kind of cool to experience. Traversing around planets, it helps big time. And the main reason for that comes to encumbrance and oxygen. These two together, when you've kind of messed them both up, you are in a world of hurt. So encumbrance is like, you have an inventory on your character, and if you go over that weight, any movement you do, even normal walking, will use up your oxygen, little supply that you've got. Then, if you use up your oxygen, you're going to start building up carbon dioxide. If you build up enough carbon dioxide and you fill that bottom ring again, then you're going to be hurting yourself as you move. So if you get to a point where you're over encumbered, when you walk, you burn oxygen. Not run, walk. So if you have a long distance to travel and you can't fast travel home because you cannot fast travel over encumbered, it is a rough moment. I've been there once and I learned my lesson and I was not going to do it again. On the other side, though, you can specialize into weightlifting to raise your encumbrance level. You can specialize into fitness, so you've got more of an oxygen supply. And there are different things you can do to make that better. Something like lockpicking is like, I almost feel required, at least a couple levels of it, because you can't actually interact with like higher level locks if you don't upgrade it at all. The higher level stuff like expert and master can sometimes be hiding junk, but there are enough times that it's hiding cool stuff that's something I don't know if I could ever not go down. Some people won't care and they're like, I'm not picking a lock doing this digital ring thing. But there's a lot of stuff that you interact with that way, and I'm very pleased I went that way. I would be curious what it would be like not having that. How would the playthrough go? I don't know. So I won't say like any skill is required, but there are some skills that help like some of my issues with the game that I do feel like I would have a hard time not choosing, because I kind of hit issues as I went along, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to skill up in that so it's less of an issue. It's not like, do I want to be a ship builder or an outpost builder? It's like, do I want my running around these worlds to be less of an annoyance? Because, as I said, any travel out you make, on foot's the same way, you've got to run out there. And again, like, when you're jumping through the air with your jetpack, you're not using oxygen, you're flying. So if you are not going to use your booster pack, and you're just running all these destinations on all these planets, yeah, it feels like even more required then. So there are a couple things when it comes to skills and income, and that's where I say it's a sim. I mean, you've got oxygen, you've got food. If you fall too far, which shout out one time when I fast traveled and then it like put me in a place where I fell too far because it warped me to a weird place and I like dislocated my shoulder. I'm like, come on. So then I got to go find the right type of healing aid so I can fix my shoulder and then I'm good to go again. So that kind of takes me to a bit more of like the status of the game. We won't talk about performance. We'll save that a little bit later if I didn't already touch it, but the status of the game. I had a decent amount of crashes. Now, decent to me was anywhere from 12 to 18. I lost track. I didn't count all of them, but it was more than 10, probably less than 20. And over the course of like 90 hours, that may not sound like that much, but when I say a crash, it is 2 desktop, just in it, close, gone. Now, the game does autosave a lot. You have 4 autosaves usually just kind of working in order. And you can also save all the time, which I highly do recommend, by the way. If you go into a new encounter, about to start an interesting like quest discussion or something, save. See how it goes. If you don't love how it went, reload that save. Not that big of a deal. So saves are definitely your friend. But as for crashes, they did happen. Bugs, I will tell you, I don't know what the day 1 patch is going to be like, so I'm not going to be able to completely tell you what is fixed, what is not, what is in the day 1 patch. I won't know that as of recording this review. But overall, I would say it's actually generally smooth. The crashes are not something anybody's going to love. I totally get that. But as for like bugs or quests not working or things of that nature, I had one issue, but it did end up getting resolved from like a patch that happened during the like literal like early access phase. And to me, there's a lot of things that did actually work. I think the year delay that they got really did make a difference. Now, a game this wide with this many systems, things are not going to work. I can have a dialogue discussion and my companion, for some reason, was trying to run to catch up, but when I started the conversation, she's behind a wall or in a doorway, so when she has a voice, I'm literally looking at just a wall. That happened more than once, actually. There were times you would start talking to somebody and you would be talking to the back of their head, and then slowly they would turn and then eventually end up talking to you. But there are some imperfections to all of the systems, I will say. But the fact that as many of them work as well as they do, I won't say this is like the be-all end-all of perfection. But I mean, when it comes to like Bethesda bugs, the crashing, yeah, it's like hopefully that stuff gets fixed. But as for, like systems, there's one point where you're, in kind of zero gravity. My companion with me was kind of at the ceiling level and was vibrating like crazy. That happened once that I noticed. So there are moments, those things and physics moments are going to happen, but on the overall performance level of polish on this thing, for as complex as this game is, I think they did a damn good job. I am actually impressed on that front. Everybody's going to probably have mileage that varies. I didn't experience every single quest or planet or little notion of every little thing. Maybe outposts are a weird buggy thing and I just don't know it because I didn't spend that much time in it. But a lot of what I did get to experience was on the whole solid. Not perfect, but solid. And I'm going to say I'm taking that as a W because the game is doing so much. So it's actually pretty impressive. Now, the UI, the menus, that type of stuff, I think it's pretty clean. You've got that nice clean lines, pretty easily accessible. I was on PC. So for me, it was generally pretty good. Some of the like in and out of menus and levels and stuff, it just like wasn't intuitive for me. So I had to get used to some things. But overall, I would say the menus ended up to be something that just like kind of worked. Maybe not perfect. Everybody's probably going to have little tweaks that you prefer. But overall, I would say the system they have in place works very well for the game that they have. And as I said, the graphics I was playing a 3090. RTX 3090 and a 5950X for my CPU. And I was recording footage a lot of the time, but I went back later and played without recording and having as little running on my computer as possible. For my rig running on my 4K monitor, I put it to medium settings on 4K, somewhere in the 40 to 60 range for frames, probably closer to 60 unless there's just a whole bunch going on. But sometimes the frame drops were real. So the performance is definitely going to be mileage may vary. Resolution, settings, if FSR for AMD side of the technology, then you've got DLSS for NVIDIA. All of that is going to be a factor. Consoles, I've heard, is probably going to be a pretty decent experience. They say locked at 30, but I can guarantee you it's probably not locked at 30, because if I had dips as low as I did, they probably do too, depending on what is going on. But I will actually say, while the frame rate was not perfect, while it was not a steady, locked anything per se for me, a lot of what I experienced was not detracted by that. Even the combat, even though it wasn't running at a perfect 60 or 120 frames per second, the game felt generally good the whole time. Yeah, you feel some frame hiccups here and there, but in the grand scope of what this game is doing and kind of what you're experiencing, I think they did a good job. You could probably polish a game forever to try and make it as optimized as possible. And that may be things that they work on over time to make frame rates smoother and better and less dips and those other things. But coming out of the gate in early access, also doing pretty well. Playing this game at 4K, I just gotta say your spaceships are gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Like, I cannot get over the spaceship graphics and then walking up in first person looking at the scale of my ship on, like, in 4K. Like, if you're playing this on, like, an OLED on Series X or even OLED on, like, PC, it's gonna be great to look at. I will tell you that. The cities, the ships, space travel, you got some fun, pretty stuff to look at. And then finally, the audio. While it looks good, it also sounds good. The guns have good weight. They have a good feel to them. Reload speeds are fitting for depending on the weapon that you're using. The shots feel like they hit generally where you're going. If you're using a rifle, there's a little bit of sway, but when you line it up and then you hold your breath, you can get a long shot, especially with, say, a silenced rifle, and it can count. You can pick somebody off from a good way across a structure. And the music, the score, like that main soundtrack when it swells, and the music that comes in certain places and battles and encounters, audio did a great job too. I mean, honestly, I want to tip my hat to the entire team at Bethesda, because I cannot imagine the work that goes into this one. And while their previous games haven't connected with me or pulled me in, and again, I haven't tried like Skyrim, Morrowind, the fact that it was space intrigued me, the RPG side of things. And then when I got to experience the stories that I went on, the characters that I got to interact with, the choices that I got to make along with combat, building my ships, flying around space, and seeing where all these stories went, I had a great time. And that is where I'm going to land in this review. I'm going to give this game an 8 out of 10, round it to 4 out of 5, whatever you want. I enjoyed this game and I recommend it. Is it going to be for everybody? I can probably say no. But I can tell you, for a lot of people, if the early bumps don't turn you off of it, and again, those I understand, but if you make it through those and you start to get a grasp for the systems and you kind of lean into what type of character you're going to play, there are some very cool experiences here that are well done. And while not everything is going to be perfect, you're going to be talking to the back of somebody's head. You're going to have somebody like photobomb a dialogue session. You're going to have a crash every so often for me on PC. Those pieces aside, the journey was still worth it. So I hope you guys got something out of this review that gives you an idea of why I enjoyed the game. And hopefully from everything I've talked about in here, you can hopefully get a good idea of if you think you're going to enjoy the game. And that was my goal, and hopefully I didn't spoil anything. I tried to be as vague as possible most of the time. This is a big one. But I honestly think this is a good 8 out of 10. And it's definitely something I recommend a lot of people play. So if you enjoyed the review, please drop a like below. Leave a comment if you jump in and play. If you just liked my style of review, if you liked what I showed, would like to see more footage, less footage, you enjoyed me talking, you don't want to see this face anymore. And also, if you play the game and you have thoughts and you come back and let me know what you think about it, let me know later on. I would be very curious to hear more people's reviews about this one when everybody else spends some time on it. Other than that, if you want to find me on Twitter or Twitch, it's Ebontis. If you're right here on YouTube for the first time, please hit that subscribe button, hit the alert bell. I'm going to be doing some guides on Starfield amongst my other videos that I do for Destiny and other games, a variety that I'm covering a little bit more range of games now. So if you enjoy the content, you enjoy me, hit the subscribe button, hit the alert bell. And to all of you out there, enjoy your travels through the stars. I think you're going to have a pretty good time.